So if there's one thing the ego doesn't want, it's our growth, which is interesting, right? Because it means that the obstacle to our growth is really ourselves. And not only that, its methods are quite sneaky. Let's talk about them. Let's see if we can have some powerful realization about how they work and develop some kind of a sophisticated solution to this problem. And we might ask ourselves, why is the ego against our spiritual development? I would argue that what is happening is really that the ego senses that this development, spiritual development, is really about the transcendence of the ego, right? So it knows that we're trying to make it obsolete, and obviously it doesn't want that. It's basically the ego, therefore, experiences our spiritual development as its own death, in a sense. And obviously it's not going to be interested in that. And then it basically uses its sneaky little methods to either hamper or resist the very work of growth, or when we do the work, corrupting it and subverting it into its opposite. Not only does the ego try to hamper our growth by, like, you might say, unsophisticated approaches like just pure resistance, right? You thinking of meditating and the ego comes in and says, let's not do it, let's do something more fun instead, or let's not introspect because it might be unpleasant. And the ego has even more sneaky methods than that, and that's really the important point here. What often happens is whenever we make some kind of progress within ourselves, what the ego does is it comes in and then it subverts it, it infiltrates it, subverts it, and turns it into basically plastic. One of the ways it does this is by taking every progress we make and making us proud of it. One of the most, I would say, prevalent examples of this is humble bragging, right? Like somebody discovers that humbleness is actually a powerful approach to life, but ironically, they cannot help themselves to be a little bit proud that they are humble, like, and then start bragging about being humble, which is exactly the opposite of humbleness. And this is exactly the example of how the ego corrupts our journey, right? What the ego basically does is taking whatever progress we might be making and turning it into its opposite. Another way it might do it is by building identity around the pride we feel around having done whatever developmental step that we've succeeded in, right? And then we become very invested in now being this person who is on this level of development. All of this is, of course, extremely toxic and should be avoided at all costs, basically. And we can do this by asking ourselves, why am I on this spiritual journey? Am I simply hunting more positive emotions, or perhaps fleeing negative emotions? Or am I doing it because it's hip? Or do I have a deeper, more profound and integrated reason to be on this journey? And if so, what is it? I would argue if we struggle to answer this question, then there is something problematic at the heart of our entire motivation to go on this journey. And answering this question would probably be a very wise thing to do before doing anything else. Other solutions for avoiding the ego corruption of our spiritual journey is, of course, developing a hardcore capacity for metacognition, and I would say critical metacognition, right? Not only thinking, but thinking about how we're thinking, and being critical in our view of ourselves, right? Learning to catch ourselves and to call ourselves out. But not only that, learning to get an existential kick in calling ourselves out on our more, or let's say, on our less integrated reasons for being on this journey. Learning that is really how we can enhance the reason why we're on this journey and avoid it being corrupted by like building identity around being a spiritual person or humble bragging or whatever it might be. And if we can do that, well,